Have you noticed that there's an awful lot of Christians out there claiming that science proves their imaginary friend is real? Now, that's never true, of course, at least not demonstrably, but that doesn't stop them from saying it, does it? Today, we're going to shoot it down. Won't that be fun? This time out, we're going to be watching a video from St. Lawrence's Church in Chorley, which is right in the middle of Lancashire, UK. Our video maker, whoever he is, he's going to run us through how the universe works, almost accurately, and then shift gears at the very end. And it's not going to be pretty, but since when is apologetics ever worthwhile? So let's go take a look.
Whoa. I just came from nowhere.
No, that's what's in your head. It would have to be in order to believe any of the ridiculous religious garbage that you happen to embrace. It looks like we're going to have to do this all over again. Debunking the idiotic religious assertions that don't exist anywhere but within their minuscule pea brains. So, yeah, let's get to it.
Or did I? Did everything come from nowhere?
If you read the Bible, that's what you believe, at least according to most Christians. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. How did he do it? Magic. Essentially what they accuse the non-religious of believing. They're just projecting. Absolutely nobody beyond the religious mindset believes that everything came out of nowhere. It's all just made up by the religiously theological because they think that everybody is just like they are. Too bad they're wrong.
Our home, planet Earth, is a mere speck when compared to the vastness of the universe, and yet this insignificant piece of rock that we live on, which orbits our sun, is unique.
No, it's not. Now, it is the only one that we've personally been to that's like it, but that doesn't really mean anything, does it? We haven't really been anywhere after all. Of all the planets that we've ever visited, a sample size of 1, it's unique. But what does that mean? Nothing at all. In fact, we know that there are a lot of planets that we've studied that are just like us. We actually estimate that there may be as many as 40 billion Earth-sized planets orbiting in the habitable zones of sun-like stars and red dwarf stars in the Milky Way galaxy alone. 40 billion. By 2020, we had identified 24 reasonably local planets that are super habitable. And that means they're even better suited for our form of life than Earth is. And that's just out of the 4,000 or so that we've currently identified. In January this past year, we found another one, LHS 475b, which was the first exoplanet to be discovered by the James Webb Space Telescope. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight. Whether you like it or not, Earth isn't at all unique.
In fact, it's so unique that it is the only place in the known universe where life exists.
That we know of. Remember, there are 40 billion candidates in this galaxy alone, and that's only counting our specific form of life. If we go to any life, any potential life, who knows about the possibilities? Remember, the religious are just really impressed with themselves for reasons that nobody can really quite understand. Aren't we just wonderful? No, you're not. Get over yourselves. The universe could be teeming with life. We just haven't run into it yet.
Now, modern scientific thinking agrees that everything might have come from nothing.
Nobody says that. Nobody but you. There are multiple cosmological ideas, and the vast majority of them do not propose that anything came from nothing. You'd have to even define what you mean by nothing. This is just something that the religious have made up. Why? Because they don't really care about being accurate or honest. Even for the ones that sort of do, to the best of my recollection, I don't think that they even say nothing. They just say, we don't know. So this is all just a load of nonsense. It's lying for the Lord, and I think we're all just sick and tired of that.
But what is nothing? Well, it's hard for us to imagine nothing because on Earth we are surrounded by things.
As far as science is concerned, there is no such thing as nothing. It doesn't exist. It can't exist. Now, somebody posted it in the comments on this video explaining why there is no nothing, and all the video maker could do is say, "Thanks for the clarification." I mean, they didn't take the video down because they don't care. They didn't make any statements about, well, we were wrong, because they don't care. Being inaccurate doesn't matter to these people. This is all about childish fifis.
But it might humble you to know that of all those things, your friends, your home, your possessions, even you yourself, and everything else in this universe are almost entirely made up from nothing.
No, they're not. Now, yes, there is a lot of space between atoms. I'm sure he's going to say something like that coming up, but that's not filled with nothing. This is what happens when you try to picture things in ways that you can comprehend in the normal world. In reality, you are not made up of mostly nothing. You are composed of a series of electron clouds, all bound together by the quantum rules that govern our entire universe. Once you get down to the quantum reality, it's hard for most physicists to even picture it. We know how it works because we can test it, but we're still learning new things every single day. Somehow, I don't really think this guy is a quantum physicist, do you? I think he's just spouting bullcrap out of his ass.
In fact, 99.9999999% of this universe is empty space.
Except it's not empty. It's full of electrical charges, true and false vacuum states, etc. It's not empty. It's not nothing. There is absolutely nowhere out there that is completely devoid of anything, especially once you get down to the quantum level, where you'd have quantum fluctuations, scalar fields, etc., etc., etc. Not that I'd expect this guy to know anything about any of that, but he's just wrong.
It's all made up from nothing. How is this the case? Well, at a basic level, everything is made up from atoms, which are made of electrons, protons and neutrons, but these atoms comprise mainly of empty space.
Nope, they're not. It's why I said I'd figured we'd get here sooner or later, but he's still wrong. This is where most people assume that atoms actually look like the picture he's got on screen, which is not really true. Most people picture the subatomic just like they picture the macroatomic, particles just swinging around like planets around a star. But that's not really how it works. In fact, we know that on the quantum level, wave-like behavior is just as fundamental as particle-like behavior, with only the conditions of the experiment involved and how we measure or interact with the bits of fundamental stuff that determines how we observe it. Our individual experience with the universe is entirely classical, but that's not really what's going on. This is just the blind leading the blind.
And if we lost all the space inside of these atoms, we would, each person, be able to fit into a single particle of dust. And in fact, the entire human species would fit into the volume of a single sugar cube.
They'd also cease to be alive. Oh, and they'd probably turn into a quasi-black hole. I mean, they don't really have as much mass, but you get the idea. A good guesstimate for the current human population of Earth is somewhere around £1 trillion or 423 billion kilograms. To the Earth, which clocks in around 6 times 10 to the 24th kilograms, humanity means nothing. The mass of all humans is about 1.5 trillionth the weight of the planet. We just don't matter. I know they don't like that, but deal. However, take that mass and shrink it down to the size of a sugar cube, and you're looking at a tremendous amount of weight in an insanely small place. That's going to cause some problems whether you like it or not.
But what is this great void that makes up most of our universe? And why are scientists now starting to think that there is a lot more to nothing than first meets the eye?
And of course, he shows a picture of Michio Kaku, who, honestly, these days, he's kind of out of his ever-loving mind. Now, he is, or he was, a legitimate scientist, having a PhD from Berkeley, but let's be honest, he hasn't done any legitimate work for years. Now he just writes crazy books for lay people and signs on to pretty much any wackadoo-woo TV show that'll pay him. I don't know of a lot of people in traditional science who think a whole lot of him these days. Lots of physicists in particular get to this stage when they suddenly think they're an expert on anything, but they are indeed an expert in nothing. It's really kind of sad to watch him speak.
Well, what we do know is that the Big Bang, a gargantuan burst of energy whose nature and source are completely unknown and not understood even by modern science, initiated the creation of our universe.
Maybe, sorta? I mean, it was an expansion of pre-existing matter when a quantum scalar field fluctuated from a false vacuum state to a true vacuum state, causing a tremendous amount of energy to be released. It's an expansion, it's not an explosion, meaning it didn't come from nothing. But I'm going to let this pass and see how long it is until he goes entirely off the rails.
Then suddenly, as if by magic, the God particle, the Higgs boson, which was discovered on the 4th of July 2012 inside CERN's powerful particle accelerator, came into being.
Yeah, but it's not a God particle. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes science uses some really poor terminology, which can be grabbed by the religious and used for their own purposes, even though they don't understand what's actually going on. It's like talking about mitochondrial Eve. There is no such thing.
Now, this God particle, the Higgs boson, miraculously gave our universe mass. At this point, our universe was a mere primeval soup of basic particles. But then, again, as if by magic, all these particles suddenly bunched in threes to form atoms, protons and neutrons circling a nuclei.
It isn't magic. That's your shtick, not ours. Everything works according to well-defined and, well, at least we're getting there, well understood scientific principles. Now, we're about halfway through this video, and we haven't gotten anywhere remotely close to any mention of God. I mean, that's the name of the video after all. Does science prove the existence of God? Unless he and his church, and this is a church channel, are bowing down to the Higgs boson, I think we better get on to the religious-y parts, don't you?
All of the conditions in the universe had to be just precisely the amounts needed so that early light atoms could be formed.
And now he's getting down to the ridiculous fine-tuning nonsense that I was expecting to come along. There is no fine-tuning because there was no plan. This is something they simply can't get through their heads. We are not intended. We were just the end result of billions of years of physics doing what physics does. We aren't special. We never have been, and we never will be. We're just star stuff that became self-aware. Whoopee. It's time to grow up.
Larger ones were then cooked in nuclear fires inside stars, giving us carbon, iron, nitrogen and oxygen and all the other elements that were essential building blocks that make up the mass of our universe.
So, where do you stick a god into any of this? The universe works just fine without one. There is no evidence for any gods of any kind, period. So why is St. Lawrence's church still around? It's a question that just has to be asked. Why are you people still there if you accept that the universe is as it seems to actually be? Because, as we all know, they're not really interested in that. They might understand how it actually works, at least as best as we can determine at the moment, but how it actually works isn't emotionally comforting. Therefore, you know the drill. Therefore, God. It just doesn't work that way, though.
And then, eventually, the highly complicated double helix molecule, the life-propagating DNA, would be formed.
No gods required. Now, I hope he's eventually going to get to his beliefs in God, because so far, this has been a generally decent explanation of how things actually went, if a bit simplistic. I've seen a couple of videos like this lately where they seem to understand basically how things actually work, but in the very end, they just end up with, but that doesn't make me happy, therefore God. So let's see if this one follows the same path.
From nothing? But this still doesn't answer our question. What is nothing? Well, scientists now believe that nothing actually might hold the key to the very existence of our universe. For it was in that nothing, the void, the empty space, the nothingness, that the phenomenon called quantum fluctuations occur.
And you're still nowhere remotely close to a god. Now, he's not exactly accurate here. I mean, you can't have quantum fluctuations in entirely empty space. There has to be something to fluctuate. But at this point, it's more of a quibble. How do you get from this, which is supported by evidence, which is demonstrable, to a god which isn't? Please explain. What I think might be happening here, we'll see, and I could be entirely wrong, I don't know, is what we see in a lot of modern apologetics. This stuff that we don't understand happened, and that's what we call God. But that doesn't mean that it's God. It's like God is a label for their own ignorance. We're going to call it this thing, and then we're just going to tell you all about that thing, what it wants, what it's made up of, and all the characteristics we've arbitrarily assigned to it. Yeah, how exactly do you do that? I mean, rationally.
In fact, empty space is full of them, it turns out. Quantum fluctuations at a basic level are just pairs of particles that leap in and out of existence when time is slowed to a near standstill.
Then it's not empty space, is it? See, words have to actually mean something. You can't just shift definitions willy-nilly whenever you get backed into a corner, and that's exactly what the religious do. Well, faith means this until we need it to mean that. Then, I don't know, your guess is as good as mine. We watch them playing musical definitions all the time, and it seems they don't even know that they're doing it. So, is this empty space, meaning the complete absence of anything, or is it not? Because it's filled with quarks and energy fields and all the rest. Pick one and stick with it.
They have always existed. They can be in more than one place at a time, and they hold infinite amounts of energy. But wait a minute. They're omnipresent. They've always existed. They are infinite, and they operate outside the bounds of space and time.
No, not really. They aren't infinite because there's no such thing as infinity. They aren't omnipresent. They may be in multiple places at once, spooky action at a distance, but that doesn't mean that they're everywhere. Nobody says that they've always existed. Quarks, as far as we know, came into existence at the moment of the Big Bang, just like everything else. And beyond space and time? Where the hell did you get that one from? This is all just made-up nonsense. If he starts to say that quarks are God, I don't know what to tell you. This guy might be farther out there than we thought.
Could it be that science is actually beginning to prove the very existence of God?
No, where did that come from? Because here he's hitting right back into, well, I don't get it, therefore God. He's introducing an outside concept not verified in any way, shape, or form, for which no confirming evidence exists, yet he really likes the idea, and therefore, you know the rest. But how did you get there? Show me the steps. Show where this God concept even came from, other than being completely made up. Science isn't proving God. Science is proving nature. Whether you feel like you have to call nature something that it isn't, that's kind of your problem, not ours. Knock it off.
Well, the one thing we do know for sure is that our universe and everything in it is nothing short of a miracle.
No, it's just physics doing what physics does. Just because you're really impressed by it, that doesn't make it miraculous. It just is. Now, I saw something by Richard Feynman a while back where he made the same kind of point that I do. People get really interested in why and not how. We can tell you how things happen. We might not have all the answers right now, but we're working on it. We're not perfect. We never will be. However, lots of people don't care about the how. They want to know the reason behind it. They want to know the purpose. And whether they like it or not, there often is no purpose. It just is. Well, what does it mean? Doesn't mean anything. It's just there. There are no larger explanations. It just exists. This is where we get so many problems, because far too many people can't deal with the world as it is. They have to attach intentionality to it, and like it or not, there just isn't any.
The fact that there is life on Earth against all odds is even more miraculous.
Nope, it's not against the odds. We're here because the conditions for life were here. We evolved to fit the conditions that existed here. If it hadn't been possible for life to evolve here, life wouldn't have evolved here. Deal with it. There is no larger explanation to it than that. Stop pretending otherwise.
Life still remains a mystery to science. The conditions required to create life are so unique that scientists can never recreate or copy it.
Except we have. We have generated entirely artificial life forms, and as time goes on, we're only going to get better at it. This is essentially how religion has always operated. Oh, you can't do what God has done? Well, beyond the fact that you can't prove that God has done anything or even exists, give it time. Then when science does manage to make it work, they'll come up with excuses for why it'll never be good enough. Okay, you did that, but you can't do this. They just move the goalposts. And then when we go and do that, they'll say, okay, how about this? It's just moving the goalposts around because they are emotionally uncomfortable dealing with the actual state of reality. It's sad, really.
So, does this answer our first question? Did everything come from nothing?
Nope, still didn't, except in your own mythology. It's been answered. Stop pretending otherwise.
Or is there even such a thing as nothing? For us, it all boils down to what we choose to put our faith in. Science or God.
No, that's stupid. Here's where these people just veer off into la la land. Faith is not a credible path to truth. It has no mechanisms whatsoever for verifying that the things that you have faith in are actually so. It's a means for self-comfort and confirmation bias, not verification of the real world. Anyone can have faith in anything, no matter how stupid or nonsensical it actually is. That's the problem. They aren't interested in getting to an accurate understanding of the real world. It's just too scary. Instead, they want to get to something comforting, some magical happy land where they don't have to think about anything very hard. They just have to believe it's true. Who cares if it actually is or not? They don't. Well, we do. It's just another reason why religion is going down the drain, and good riddance to it. After that, he just goes on to advertise for his church, and we're going to skip over all of that. This is another video where they get so close and then they take a hard left into insanity at the end. It's like, here's a pretty decent explanation of what's going on. I mean, not perfect, but what can you expect for YouTube? And then at the very end, he just staples God onto it and says, see, we're right. But you never demonstrated that you were right. That's something that you can't just paper over with a thin veneer of blind faith and expect anyone to take you seriously. It's why religion is such a ludicrous joke. But I really want it to be true. Okay, so what? Truth is only true when it's actually true. You aren't remotely close to getting there. Maybe you ought to try a little bit harder. Just a helpful hint, because until you do, you're just making yourself look dumb. You started out strong, and look where you ended up. Come on, you're better than that. At least try.
Bum